Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 12 p.m. BST every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make money by leveraging the internet and the latest technologies. I'm your host, B-Check. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary. Nothing that we do or say here is financial advice. I'm just thinking of all the financial advice that we're about to give. That's why I just stuttered there. But nothing that we do actually is. We do talk a lot about numbers, and a lot of them are going up at the moment. That's why we just want to make that clear. With that out of the way, Legendary, how are you doing this Wednesday, the 1st of November?
I was laughing because I was afraid you're coming up with a new way to intro me, like we did yesterday on our other show, Legendary underscore NFT. And I was just bracing myself for what is to come. Other than that, I'm doing well. It is another public holiday in Austria. We love the public
What?
holidays. We love the bank holidays here.
What is
But
going
it
on?
seems that if I look at the audience, everyone is at a conference right now. People are either at ApeFest or at Breakpoint Solana in Amsterdam. And we are not. We are missing out again. We're staying at home, and the
Yeah.
FOMO is increasing. I managed to FOMO quite well so far, but a couple posts did trigger some Amsterdam FOMO that I've seen on the timeline. Like the
Why?
yacht party yesterday, then people getting ordinals at the Seppi Seals thing. Quite a few cool things going on.
Why are we here? Like, why are we not at one of those places? That's a good question. It's never like these two in particular never came across my radar, but as you say, suddenly now I do kind of feel
We
like
spoke about ApeFest on the show, though. I know we didn't speak about Breakpoint, but we did speak about ApeFest.
I don't think I would have ever actually gone to ApeFest though. I've never been in the Bored Ape ecosystem. I know it's much bigger than that now, but still, it was never really on my radar. But maybe for you, given that you've been in the ecosystem, were you tempted? Which one were you more tempted by, Amsterdam or ApeFest?
Location-wise, ApeFest. Definitely more intrigued to go to Hong Kong. Event-wise, Amsterdam.
That's interesting though, because
So,
obviously,
I did strike a compromise and didn't go to any of those.
yeah, absolutely. That is interesting though, because Breakpoint is a Solana focused event, right? And it seems like there's been a lot of people across the board who have gone and or who have wanted to go, despite maybe even traditionally being more aligned with ETH and everything that's going on that side of things. So that is interesting just to notice that uh, that conference is people are getting pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and I've never been to a Solana-only conference. And, often when we speak about Solana, we speak about community. So I actually would have been quite curious to experience the vibes there, the community feeling firsthand.
Yeah, I think it would have been good. Which event did you see which inspired the most FOMO for you?
Definitely would have loved to go to an OK Bears meetup.
Because so the OK Bears, they're one of the biggest Solana communities, right? The profile picture communities.
Very, very Europe-centric as well from the community members. Used to be my PFP, still have the OK Bears, still in very, very frequent touch with the team and some of the community members, but never have been to one of their events. So this would have been the main reason for me.
Yeah, I can see that would have been quite nice. On the other side of things, Ape Fest seems to be starting quite well for the people who are going. Were you tempted at all from that perspective?
Not so much, to be honest. I would have rather have gone to Token 2049. This gave me massive, massive FOMO.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, the one thing that we have seen broadly is across the board, everyone going on tour, whether it's something formal like an event like Ape Fest, or whether it's something a bit less formal where teams are just trying to get out to the eastern regions to go on tour, to like go and meet people, to go and hang out with people. One of the really interesting things I learned yesterday, I was playing football and I play with someone who is in the digital art space, kind of working for a more traditional gallery. and they said they're going out east like all the time, all the time. And now I know that's probably been true for quite some time, and it's not maybe isn't like brand new news, but it was just interesting to me because I wasn't necessarily aware of that. I'd thought that maybe uh, the the focus would always be London, Paris, New York, and he did say that it is, but he just said it's been so successful out there recently, and there were just so many people who are interested in the digital side of things, which is fascinating. Very very bullish for the region. Very very bullish for digital art, which is absolutely great. Let's get into the rest of the show today. As always, um, before we do that, please help us out by clicking that comment button in the right hand corner. You can retweet the spaces so we can get some more people in here with all of us. And as always, if you want to follow along, the first slide of the snapshot is pinned up top. It has the details I'm about to share. Please do like it if you find that it brings you some value today. So let's get into it, starting with the price action. We have Bitcoin at 34.4K, ETH at 1.8, Solana up 7% at 38.8. It just doesn't stop going up. Legendary, we're going to talk about that particularly in just in a moment. Ape is down a couple of percent at 1.3. NFT volume is still healthier than it was before. Total at 11.9, Blur at 8.4, OpenSea at 2.5. To the headlines, number one, Elon Musk criticizes NFTs on a recent podcast with Joe Rogan because he said they only link to URLs of the JPEG. Pretty fair criticism, actually, on some level. There is obviously on-chain art as well. Going to discuss that, see if that's valid. Number two, Gary Gensler warns crypto companies tricking investors to comply with security laws in a strange Halloween tweet. Very strange. We do like to dunk on Gensler every now and again. Legendary will get his opportunity to do so in just a second. And finally, Azuki announces Satoshi Nakamoto hoodie exclusive for Spirit holders. Going to touch on that in just a bit. Getting into the floor prices and top sales, we have CryptoPunks at 47, Bored Apes up 4% at 31.4, Mutant up a couple of percent at 5.8, DGods at 3.2, Captains at 5.6, down 3%, Azuki 5.2, Penguins 5.1, Moonbirds at 1.9, and Nouns at 27 ETH. A couple of notable sales: CryptoPunk bandana selling for 49 ETH, that's $88,000, and an Artifact Alien Vial selling for 16.5 ETH, that's $30,000. Legendary, that is the price action. Those are the headlines. Where do you want to, what numbers do you like out of those, actually?
I do like to see Solana being up another 7%, although I do struggle a bit to understand the overall narrative. And I think, again, this would have been helpful to be at Breakpoint Amsterdam to see what drives it and to hear more people and more viewpoints from inside the community of what's going on with the price action. I mean, we're up 70% over the last 30 days.
Yes, we are. That's pretty insane. So we're up 60. Well, this is from CoinGecko. 62% in the last 30 days. Interestingly, 63% in the last 14 days. So somehow it's actually even on a shorter time frame than what you've said.
Interesting. My coin market cap says 70% for the last 30 days. I love it.
Yeah, it's funny. These numbers don't actually work half the time. Like on Blur, for example, this is just a point to make for anyone trying to analyze things, that you want to be careful sometimes. I obviously check the prices every single day. And there are times when I know 100% what the price was the day before because I've reported on it. And then it will say like the same price the next day, but then it will say like up 2% or something. And it's just like, well, that's definitely not correct. So for all we say about everyone knowing about the blockchain and everything working perfectly, it just is definitely off sometimes. Whether that's the kind of the site on top of the chain, obviously the chain is correct, but things are not always being read ideally. But anyway, Legendary, you were saying Solana's up a great deal. You thought you've been giving some thought to it, not knowing 100%. But what are your thoughts? I know you wrote a tweet on it this morning. What have you been thinking about, Sol?
Yeah, look, I tried to understand what is driving the narrative to, see why it is outperforming other cryptocurrencies. I mean, Solana has always been a bit more volatile, but I did talk to quite a few people trying to understand a bit what's going on. And one of the narratives that I did hear the most often, and it's something we also touched upon on the show, was that relative lows concept, looking at BTC, seeing BTC is only a 2x away from the all-time high. Solana has a bit more than 6x to go until it would have reached its all-time high of 260-ish dollars. Like, this is one of the things that came up quite often. And bear in mind that I've been using Solana for more than 1.5 years, more than 2 years, I think. User experience, obviously, super fast transactions. We spoke about it on the show yesterday, having the Phantom news that you mentioned in the Web3 roundup, where you can now basically take a picture and just straight from the camera mint it to Solana. Another point that people did bring up was it is an EVM alternative. If you don't like ETH and the L2 ecosystem building on top of it, you would have an alternative L1 with Solana. And definitely, to me, the strongest point out of those, apart from that bullish narrative around the quote unquote relative lows, the community part of things. Like, if you look at the user base trickling down on Solana, if you look at the core dev number going down, but you look at the representation on the timeline, you definitely would think that Solana is way, way bigger than it appears. It appears to be way bigger than it actually is. When you look at users, when you look at TVL, I think TVL is somewhere around, according to DeFi Llama, 440 mil. That's a bit smaller than Avalanche and Optimism. Base is actually catching up to Solana's TVL, standing at 300 something, 350, 360 mil. So definitely it seems like Solana is punching above the weight when it comes to the perceived representation on the timeline. So I would say that community strength on the one hand, the other hand, that relative lows concept might drive the price action. And then there might be something also going on at Breakpoint Solana, right? That is driving the bullish sentiment. We've seen that before, that you had positive price action tied to conferences, but that's something that I obviously can't speak to as I'm not there.
I thought that was always the opposite. I thought, like, every time there was that Bitcoin Miami thing, we'd tank. Anytime there was a big ETH conference, we tanked. Maybe it's just positive price action from Solana conferences. I don't know.
If you were to look at it from the more community-driven aspect and compare it to some NFT conferences that did drive the price in anticipation, you could make that point. But I just don't know about that. So this is why I also left it out in my long form post.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm gonna, before we get onto some of the cons on Solana, I just want to touch on your points and give my thoughts on what I think is going on. I remember when we spoke about, so I think there's definitely the community aspect. I think they are very active and they've clearly have a lot of people, passionate people who are building there, which is very, very important. I think that is true. I really think, and this is like the simplistic part of the brain, I genuinely think it's the point which people are looking at the relative lows versus the previous all-time highs and just thinking this has far more room to run than the other people. It's not that other people think that BTC and ETH aren't going to go up. It's just that they think Solana is going to go up at a faster rate because the previous all-time high, there are more multiples to get to the previous all-time high than for the others. Because Bitcoin now, I mean, Bitcoin pushing 34K, that's just a 2x back to 69, right? Whereas Solana at 30, okay, now it's pushing 40. But that's a 6x getting back into the 200s.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think it was actually even higher than 250, wasn't it, at one point?
Was it 260?
Yeah, something like that. So look, I know we spoke about that the other day, and I think you were a little bit dismissive of that as a reason for why it should be the case, which is different to what it, there's a difference between what something should be versus what it, like, how people might actually think, whether they should or shouldn't. But I just think that idea is in people's heads now. And
Yeah, I think it is a simple concept, right? It is simple to understand. Obviously, emotions do fuel runs on assets, and you can't make a point around the scalability, EVM alternative, blah blah. You would lose the people there. And if you want a narrative and say BTC 2x, Solana 6x away from all-time high, do the math, Annan. Will you fade again? You have beautiful engagement farming post templates ready to go and show, and it's easier to understand that than other things that would drive a bull run. But on that note, very quickly though, while I've been writing this thread, you know what I've been thinking about in terms of other like L1 alternatives and other blockchains that I actually should look into just because of the size, but I'm constantly ignoring it. I have no idea what's going on with Tron. I have
oh,
no idea. I mean, Justin Sun's ecosystem, they have what, 8 billion TVL, and maybe like, I don't know, maybe it's 7 billion. It's from Justin Sun himself. I have no idea.
I thought
I
you were going
just
to say another
never
one.
look into Tron. No, which one? What are you thinking?
Monad.
Oh, no, no.
Have you
But
heard of this
like,
one though?
yeah, I have.
Okay.
But no idea what's going on in Tron, really. Like, we never speak about it, never see it on the timeline. I think the only times I see it is when Justin Sun makes a tweet that goes that viral, when it happened that USDC was depegging and he deployed, I don't know how many, couple hundred million to do something about it. But other than that, never really put thought into that.
Yeah. I want to come on to this in a second of like where else we could be looking in terms of different L1s. I just want to come back to you on the point you made about the narrative for Sol. There are 5 letters which always lose me: ZK and EVM. Once people start talking about those two things, I start to disappear. However, I do think one thing that maybe you didn't mention, well, you mentioned this new application where you could take a photo, snap it instantly, go onto the blockchain. That is super cool via Phantom Wallet. That's definitely really cool. But there's also just a bunch of other really cool stuff going on Solana, and they're getting really mainstream adoption in various ways, right? They had some partnership with Visa go through with, and then even today, like in the snapshot, I mean, this is coming a little bit later. In fact, it's not in the image, but I included it anyway. Google BigQuery integration with Solana is now live. Solana said, thanks to BigQuery's seamless integration with Solana, developers now have streamlined access to comprehensive historical data, work with and analyze over 215 billion transactions, more easily integrating your applications with Solana data. So there's just all kinds of like very big partnerships going on with some very traditional big players, which I think, again, going back to like what's more easy to understand, I think that also is able to hit home with people, and people can think like, right, this is actually getting some real traction. And again, that's not to say that ETH isn't getting traction, because it is. It's not to say that other things are not getting traction, but it's just it's definitely that. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, the partnerships definitely play a role on the one hand. On the other hand, you could also make the same argument for Polygon,
True.
where the BizDev
Yep.
team is doing amazingly. But
Absolutely.
one thing that did stand out in terms of the community, to stay on the Solana topic for a bit longer, is that you don't have the same feeling like when you talk about Polygon, when you talk about Arbitrum for gaming, it is not an us versus them.
Sure.
But often, when I scrolled the timeline today, when I was writing that, I've seen couple Soul influences with a take. The thing that got us there is the us versus them
Mm.
mentality, that community, that we are sticking together. And someone, I don't want to name that person, was talking about D-Gods, and how he and his soul buddies all hate D-Gods because they left the ecosystem when Solana would have needed them most. And look where
Oh
they are
god.
now, and look where Solana is recovering. And you wouldn't go for that same, like, you can't be an Arbitrum maxi and be it's us versus the ETH people, because you are the ETH people. You are a layer 2 built on ETH. So there might be something to the community argument. I'm not a big fan of us versus them mentalities, but definitely I think that community resilience is outstanding, especially if you go back 1 year to the FTX crash and see the sub 10 Solana did back then, and how it did recover from there, and how it didn't fall apart. Other blockchains might have fallen apart after such an event, right?
Yeah, I actually saw that tweet. And I know what you mean when you say that you're not a fan. Like, I think on a personal kind of human level, I'm not an us versus them kind of person. Like, if you're genuinely trying to work professionally, it's not good, not 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 wise to be that way hugely. But on the same time, I thought it was kind of funny. And from the sports person in me, because I'm a big sports person, I kind of like it sometimes, like just to see that passion. Because I don't know, when you're so diplomatic and you're not us versus them, things become a little bit more uh, tepid. It becomes a little bit more calm, a little bit more diplomatic. Sometimes you need to see that fire, like you need to see the fire, and maybe sometimes you need to create something, create some idea or perception of the opposing group in order to really try to work harder. Um, so I do. I mean, I kind of like the idea on some level, but I did find it funny. And also, it's like, guys, you're only at $40. Like, you're not. It's not like a full blown recovery. You're still like 80% down from the very very top point. So I don't think people should be celebrating as such just yet. Um, I want to take the discussion to where you were about to go, which is like, look, one of the things about this show and in general is like, yes, we're going to do the headlines, but we're also trying to point out some of the things which we have found interesting or helpful or even successful in the last 2 years in the space. One of the things which Legendary was particularly good at when I first met him, what I realized very quickly was that he was exceptionally good at figuring out, which L2s we should be exploring, which L1s we should be exploring, which protocols we should be exploring. And we've actually worked together to produce like quality stuff for other people to be able to access those protocols with a view to participating and getting a share of those airdrops when they come through. And I think this is the time we have noticed like things are just clicking into gear, things are just becoming a little bit more alive. Solana is obviously coming alive, but Legendary mentioned L1 as Tron, which is something he wants to look at. Obviously, it already exists, so it might not be an airdrop opportunity there. But are there any other places that you think people should be looking just to be like, look, what's going on there? What's going on there? Like, should we be bridging over just to check it out, just to see what's going on? What are your thoughts there?
I think you have to find a good balance between, we've been doing that airdrop tutorials for more than 70 weeks in a row.
Yes.
But you have to find a good balance between what you can realistically cover, and I don't think you can be active on multiple layer ones all of the time. And seeing that on ETH, you have so many opportunities right now on layer twos, whether that's CK Sync, whether that's Starknet, whether that's Space, whether that's protocols built on those layer twos. And you can also always use bridges to move your funds around very efficiently between those layer twos and go for bridges that just don't have a token yet, whether that's Orbiter or other bridges that you might like to use. I think it's just more efficient to get that repeated activity going if you were to look at it from an opportunity perspective, looking for potential airdrops, to just focus on L2s on ETH if this is where the majority of your capital is sitting right now, as opposed to try to explore alternative L1s.
Yeah.
I mean, we had Sui and we had others that we talked about and they were like quickly there and then disappeared. Same with Aptos. But Tron was for me like more of an educational question as to what is driving their ecosystem, that it is still apparently that big. Again, TVL $8 billion. I don't know how organic or how inflated that number is, so I can't speak to the quality of the quantity. But
Is that like 6 billion just in Tron, 2 billion?
Yeah, I mean, could be, right? Could be. But I have no idea. So I just want to educate myself a bit more to have a better understanding of that.
That is
You
a
ever
very good
looked into
point.
Tron?
No, not really. And you're right. You're very right in saying that it's not something. I think it's uh one of those scenarios where it's something much bigger in the East. This is like a pure guess. This is like my instinctive feeling. The people who are influential on this side of the globe just don't talk about it as much and are not as involved or as invested. I suspect that the people on the other side of the globe are a bit more, and therefore it gets more prominence. But you're right, the numbers make it such that you should probably have an idea of what's going on. That would be my conclusion on that as well. I agree with
Yeah,
you.
I mean, you have more than 1.6 million active addresses over the last 24 hours. You have $1.5 million in fees. Compare that to Solana, for example. I mean, not that it's a comparison that necessarily makes sense size-wise, but still Solana would be like between 20 to 30K of the last year. The token's up 60%. So something is obviously going on. And just
Sure.
have no idea how much of it's organic, how much is inflated, who's
Yeah.
using that blockchain, and I just want to learn about.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Going back to one of your other points which you made, which stood out to me, was you said Base is catching up with Solana potentially in terms of TVL. My reading of that situation is not necessarily that, oh, Base is, just really, really good and could be equivalent to Solana in any way. My reading of that is the market betting on an airdrop from Base, because we've seen this numerous times where when the market starts to feel like someone is going to do an airdrop, the TVL just gets much bigger. People start bridging over, people start being more active on that particular chain. And then it's just a battle for the chain after the airdrop to decide to figure out how much they can continue to incentivize people to stay. One of the things Optimism has done really well is hold back a certain amount of the airdrop to continue to try to incentivize ongoing use and participation on that L2. One of the ways they do that is by trying to make you stake some of your OP coins, try to get you to participate in governance via those via your governance tokens, and then that makes you eligible at least for a little bit longer for the continued batches of airdrops that they're going to do every now and again. Arbitrum, I don't believe, have done anything like that, though the TVL has been very, very healthy since, because I think they've managed to create a pretty strong community. But yeah, that's my take on Base. I think people are starting to bet on it, particularly if it's rising. The TVL is rising so high, and I think the indications that they made, the back and forth, like, oh, mate, yeah, we want to decentralize, but we also at the same time can't say that we're going to do a token. I think that's the bet. At least the market is starting to make.
I mean, I spoke about that on the ZTX gaming spaces that I hosted
Yeah,
yesterday, and even though it's gaming, the analogy is very much the same. Airdrops are fantastic tools for user acquisition.
yeah,
However, user retention is the real challenge then. Like,
sure.
you have to think about the initial distribution of the token in whose hands you want to get it. But then the challenge is, how do you keep users on your L2? And it's the very same problem that both games and layer 2 solutions figure. And on your note on Arbitrum, just to have that, Arbitrum's TVL has been doing good. It's like close to 2 billion. It's at 1.8. It has been growing. I think a good reason for that is also the additional activity that comes from the gaming side of things, where we see that loads and loads of games are going on Arbitrum. And one last point that I want to make on that is Ronin. Ronin as, Axie Infinity's blockchain that also is positioning themselves as a gaming blockchain, and that many, many people seem to be pretty bullish on. And also the RON token did see a nice recovery. Now we have Pixels launching, I think, on Ronin's blockchain, on Axie Infinity's Ronin blockchain, sorry. And this is going to be interesting. Obviously, gaming is the mega trend, and you have multiple L2s competing for games and game ecosystems to be built on them. And Axie Infinity is just not the poster child of gaming that it used to be. So it would be interesting if they manage to attract more games while Arbitrum is trying to do the very same with Arbitrum Nova, that is, and fighting for the very same target audience.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think, as you say, they're in real competition with each other to attract the best games now, because they all have the same use case, really. So definitely can see that playing out. A final question on the numbers in terms of the allocations, in terms of the price, because I think a lot of people now are starting to. I don't know if you've got any of those texts from friends who may have been involved at one point in time, then disappeared during the bear, and then may now be interested again. But I think people are just starting to feel some of that attention come back and are wondering where we are. Is this something which is short-lived? Is this the part where we are in despair? Is this the what on that chart? What's the part of the chart where you're going up? Oh, disbelief. Is it the disbelief part of the chart where it keeps going up and people are like, no, it's going to come back down, and then it's not? You mentioned that you are DCAing into, or you have been DCAing into Solana. And again, this is not financial advice. We don't do that type of stuff. But I'm just trying to gauge where you think the market is as it currently stands.
Impossible to tell. I mean, obviously, we're seeing a recovery of sorts right now. Is this the start of a new bull cycle? I think this will take longer. I'm still a bit hesitant. I mean, obviously, I'm enjoying the green, but it just wouldn't be sincere of me to say, this has marked the start of the next bull cycle, because truth be told, I have no idea. I have full conviction in Web3 as a space. I have enough capital set aside to have a good burn rate to make it through multiple years of a bear market if that were to be the case. But I can't absolutely not say where we are right now. But what I want to say, though, is one shout out from our comments on X, because we asked, about the reasons why Solana is going up and if Breakpoint has anything to do with that. And Sammy, who is one of our very frequent speakers, is at Breakpoint right now, and he's saying Solana is going up because of Breakpoint. We are market bidding Solana and buying Clenosaurs and Bodogos.
Oh, very good. Okay, that's good. That's
we have the answer. It was that easy.
Interesting. Really, really good. That's very positive to hear. We like to know what's going on in the conferences and that everyone is just pressing the buy button. If we should do more conferences just like that, to be honest. Great news. I think that's the price stuff covered. Legendary. We've talked quite a lot on price, where we think the market's going. And just for the audience to know, I think we're kind of, well, I'm saying from my perspective, we're kind of getting into that point where things are clicking into gear. And I'm feeling I need to pay more attention to the market for like almost 2 years now, or a year and a half, or whatever it's been. It's been a little bit like, okay, we've got interesting stuff. Let's keep involved. But I really want to get dialed in now. So yeah, we're going to keep touching on it, keep trying to explore which options might be best, why price action might be happening the way it is, and probably having like a dedicated segment to that on each show. So hopefully that was an interesting discussion, particularly on the layer 2s, L1s, and all these things that could be exploding anytime soon. So let's get into the headlines, Legendary. We've taken some time on that. The first headline today was from DGen News, and it was a message from Elon Musk saying that NFTs are scams. They're not even encoded on the blockchain. What's going on? What did you think of Elon's criticism on the Joe Rogan podcast when he went on?
I mean, he has a fair point. But again, if we connect it back to the discussion around Solana and around easy to understand narratives, there's been times in the market where we tried to push for an on-chain premium. Stuff that is on-chain is more valuable. We had the discussion with Art. We had the discussion with Nate Alex's arena game, with the chain faces that are all on-chain, where all of the arena is happening on-chain. I remember Beanie back in the bull market pushing for the reveal of the generative identities in the Pixel Vault ecosystem, where I think that the randomization process and the generation of it wasn't done before the mint, but it was done live on chain throughout the mint. And he tried to explain why this should be the new gold standard back then, but nobody was really following that concept. We've also seen the timeline, that the ordinals timeline, making a big point that this is a bullish signal for ordinals, of course. So I absolutely, Elon Musk is a fair point. Like, if your NFT isn't pointing to the right URL anymore, or it's pointing to the right URL, but that content is just not available anymore, and what's the point of it? But it's not as easy to understand, I say, like a fully on-chain narrative. Obviously, some things like the chain faces by Ned Alex, for example, they are very sensible to be stored on chain because they're just small SVG files. You can't store a 4K video realistically on the Ethereum blockchain as on-chain art.
Yeah, very, very fair points. I think that's all pretty reasonable. As you say, the cost becomes way too high, I think, in practice. I don't know what the more intelligent solution then is, because I think it is very, very true that um you're stuck in a situation where if the URL, if the people who run the URL goes down, then you're screwed in some respect. I think, and I need to research more into this, Arweave claim to have a decent data solution to this, where the stuff does get put on chain in a kind of different way. I need to double check that. I just wanted to ask you if you know much about that. Could that be a potential solution, or I don't know if you know about it?
Not too much about the technicalities around Arweave, obviously more on the IPFS side of things,
Sure.
interplanetary file system, where you have the peer-to-peer distribution to try to get a more decentralized approach to data storage. But even with services like Pinata who do that, I know there's also pitfalls, and it's not a perfect solution yet, but I don't know if and how that's different from what Arweave is doing.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. It's something that to look into. But I suspect if it was such a perfect solution, then maybe artists who had bigger files would have already used it if everything was just on chain. But I guess it's just not. There's no easy way to get around the fact that it's far more costly to put more complex files all on chain. But yeah, I mean, I hope that people in the audience did know that though. Like, I think, but at this point, we have a fairly sophisticated group of listeners, and it's certainly a risk that people should be aware of. The only other people who, if you are concerned about this, that you could take a look at is, I know Art Gnome, who is probably one of the most prominent collectors and writers around on NFT art, because he was buying all kinds of really early stuff, very, very early, considered to be, yeah, just one of the earliest collectors. He's got something called Club NFT, where they attempt to back up your files for you. So in the event that whatever hosting site goes down, you can you can have your own file, and therefore maybe you can upload somewhere else if necessary. Um, so that's just something to bear in mind.
Interesting. Wasn't aware of that.
Sounds good. Okay, so I think that's maybe enough on that. Shall we move on to the next piece, Legendary, where one of your favorite topics is dunking on Gary Gensler? I wonder if you'd like to take the opportunity to do some dunking. And then I see, Sam, you've been with us for a while. We've just been rambling on for a bit. Would love to know if you'd like to get in on the dunking in just a moment. But legendary first.
So Gary Gensler had that post on Halloween. If Satoshi Nakamoto went as Satoshi Nakamoto for Halloween, would we be able to tell? Happy 15th anniversary to Satoshi's famous white paper that started crypto. Any crypto companies that are tricking investors should start treating them to compliance with the securities laws. I didn't manage to make a lot of sense from that post, to be honest. It sounds like
I'm so glad that you said that,
it
because I
sounds like
read
you
it as,
prompted ChatGPT. I want to write something about Halloween, but also make people aware. Give me a pun on tricking investor because it's trick or treat, and just write something about securities laws. And ChatGPT, an old version of ChatGPT, did a half-hearted attempt of coming up with a post. This is how this reads to me.
You say that, right? You say it could be written by ChatGPT, but I think ChatGPT would have made it competent. You would have needed to tell ChatGPT to do it in an incompetent way to make like the third sentence be so out of like balance with the first and second. I mean,
Actually,
I don't know if
what I'm
any
gonna
of
do
these
right now,
sentences are in balance with each other.
I'm gonna put that into ChatGPT and ask it to make it a better post to see what it does. In the meantime, we can also
Yeah, I
go
mean,
ahead.
definitely do that. Also, just ask ChatGPT if this makes any sense. I'd be interested to know like what it thinks. In the meantime, Sam, welcome with us. What are your thoughts on this? Did this make any sense to you?
I think it does. I will tell you guys, I am probably the least SEC critical person on crypto Twitter.
Ah,
I think that uh, I almost see more issue with the amount of scams that happen in this space than I do with the idea of regulating them.
sure.
Obviously, I don't think that SEC goes about it in the right way, but I find the amount of insider trading, insiders making billions of dollars off retail and then disappearing, or not even disappearing, but like providing no transparency, people having no idea what they're getting. I find that stuff just as problematic. So that's just a little bit of my bias. But yes, this tweet reads very weird. I think that the SEC has, they've been pretty clear, I believe, on Bitcoin and Ethereum kind of being commodities as opposed to securities. And I think he's kind of saying that here, like, hey, I'm not all evil, happy birthday, but then he is throwing in a bit of a knife twist. And each line independently, I actually find perfectly fine, but as a trio, it's a bit of a head jerky tweet.
Yeah, I think that was what I found so funny. It was like each line independent is like, well, they do make sense independently, and then you put them together, and there's just some kind of incongruence. It's like, trying to say different things when just piece like the jigsaw getting put together in a weird way.
I think if he had left out the third line, it would have been a fine tweet. I think he
Yes,
does have some
yes,
branding to do here, which is like, I'm not anti Bitcoin, Ethereum. I'm not anti crypto. I am anti companies that issue tokens and then hide their wallets and buy and sell them on insider information and walk away with $100 million without providing retail with any idea what they're actually getting. Like, I think those are all very congruent things for him to say.
yes,
But I think he could have branded himself a little bit better here by just saying happy 15th anniversary to the white paper. Like,
yeah.
I think, I'm not anti-crypto. Like that would have been smart, but clearly that did not really align with his desire to always stick a knife into certain people's situations.
Yeah, just an interesting point on that. I don't know if you saw, Sam, but we had a bunch of, I don't know if it's like approved regulation or draft regulation, but come out in the UK yesterday. And there was all types of stuff trying to get to the bottom of some of the things that you just suggested, right? Like you've talked about all kinds of insider trading. It's obviously an unregulated space as things stand. So, you know, you can't really have insider trading of assets which are not regulated. But they're trying to determine where the lines are on some of those things. And I think NFTs basically um, are going to sit outside of it from memory, although it's kind of a lengthy document, need to check again. But there are certain instances where they will need to be regulated a bit more. I don't know if you had a chance to see that.
I did not know. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I'll send it over to you to see what you think, because it was kind of interesting, and I think the broad consensus was it's good that the UK is doing this. That was the kind of TLDR, like this is a positive attempt. Like no one was like, oh my god, this is crazy, it's overreach. This is that was not the outcome in the end. So yeah, interesting to see.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's certainly like I can't quite tell. I feel like on the one hand, I think there is a desire for clarity, and I think like that. That is that is something that we said at Uber a lot. It's like we're not anti-right. You like we want to work with regulators to make regulations be in line with the technological advances, et cetera, et cetera. I find like that line is very common, but I find when they actually come out and actually do things, people tend not to like Like, no, we don't want that regulation. We just want this vague regulation where we're not going to be very specific. But perhaps this is a good example in the UK of something coming out that people actually align with and appreciate. So I'll definitely try to dig into that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Go on, Legendary.
Yeah, no, I wanted to say that like my issue with the SEC or with Gary Gensler is just exactly that lack of clarity. It's not with regulation per se. It's just that what the SEC is doing is not helpful at all to bring additional clarity. And I obviously live between London and Vienna, so but my main residence still is in the EU, and I do like to criticize EU's tendency to overregulate stuff. But they've done a fine job with the MiCA, with the markets in crypto assets, with that regulation and with bringing clarity to everything around that, which certainly is way more helpful than that vague state of just not knowing what's right, what's not right. So this is my main issue with Gary Gensler and the SEC, not the regulation per se, but that the way how they are wanting to move that forward and not really helping by bringing clarity, I find a bit troublesome. As much as I like dunking on his posts.
Yeah, I mean, two things I've learned in NFTs are never say anything positive about OpenSea and never say anything positive about the SEC. So I will. I shouldn't even say positive. I say neutral. You're not even saying anything neutral about them. But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I think that's a pretty common perspective that people, just want a better understanding of what's legal, what's illegal.
Yeah, absolutely. And adding to the other side, I did put it into ChatGPT to see what it would make out of the tweet.
What did it say?
ChatGPT crashed on me, and it just refuses to reload. So I guess it just hated the post as well. That's my reading.
ChatGPT was like, "This is too hard of a task. Why are you fucking with me? I can't even fix this."
Well, we want to know. We want to know what ChatGPT thinks. It clearly is unable to get to it at the moment.
I mean, the irony here, B-Check, is that you're the lawyer. What's your view? You're the lawyer asking us our views. What's your perspective?
My view on the tweet,
or just on kind of like the legal framework and what we're saying.
I mean, my view on the tweet is clear. My view on the way that they're kind of attempting to regulate is kind of the Coinbase perspective. You might have seen in essence, the Coinbase perspective is that there is no regulation at the moment, and the way that they are seeking to regulate is by enforcement. So they're kind of baiting, they're kind of going after people without making it clear. And I just think that, and it's not really even a legal perspective. It's almost like from a philosophical standpoint, it doesn't feel right to be going after people when you know full well that you just haven't really made the lines clear. And so I think my perspective is the Coinbase perspective, which, look, we want regulation, we want things to be clear, but we certainly disagree with any idea of regulation by enforcement, which is you just coming after us, telling us we've done stuff wrong when we didn't know that was wrong, and we were reaching out to you, trying to do something right. And then you tell us it was wrong after, but you didn't tell us that at the start when we applied to you. So I think...
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of what we did at Uber.
Yeah,
like
sounds that way, right?
Well, we would break the law, and we knew we were breaking the law. And I was arrested 2 times, when I worked at Uber, because it was unquestionable that we were breaking the law in certain countries. But then we would say, well, we don't understand the regulation. We knew exactly what the regulation was. It's not. I don't think it's hard to know that a lot of these tokens are securities I think by the current legal framework. I don't think that's a hard stretch when you look at something, like a Blur token where they're talking about potential fees going back to token holders, or places where fees do. It's just not even negotiable, I think, but there's enough, you can hand wave enough to create uncertainty and then say it's just not clear. And regulators they actually, in our case, I think the regulators were enough confused that they didn't want to get involved. And it would really only happen 3 years later. The reason I got arrested in Hong Kong was because a bunch of taxi drivers went and literally burned a taxi in front of City Hall in Hong Kong.
Oh,
and then
wow.
the was like, okay, yeah, like we have to do something here. Whereas at first they would just rather ignore it because you just kind of don't want to deal with that stuff. They have other stuff to worry about. So I don't know. Like I said, it's I see a lot of traces of that in the Coinbase strategy.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. There's that little bit of apathy from government to really have to get to terms with it. Like any government body, I think it's exactly as you just explained. Like, do we want to deal with this? Not really. Maybe we can just leave it until it really, really becomes necessary.
Do we want all the cool kids who we don't understand tweeting about how evil we are, and my kids seeing those tweets and coming home from school and being like, Dad, why did you do this? I literally think those things matter, especially when you have movements from people who are like 1/3 the age of the people who are regulating them.
Yeah, not just 1/3 of the age, but that kind of top level age just keeps getting higher and higher as well. Like that's one of the things about what we see in the States, where it's like, okay, 1/3 of the age. Once upon a time, that could have been like teenagers versus the 50-year-olds. Now it's like 30-year-olds with 70, 80-year-olds. So it's kind of even more warped in that respect.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Super interesting. Really interesting discussion on that. Legendary, we've got a few minutes left to get into the final headline. Let me just do a quick roundup from the Web3 space so we can get up to date with what else has been going on. As always, it's in the snapshot. It's pinned up top. Let's do it. Number one, the ApeCoin DAO election season begins. So that's kind of cool. So starting Wednesday, November the 1st, applicants are invited to nominate themselves. There's all kinds of positions. Check it out. Number two, USDC issuer Circle announces shutdown of retail accounts. That means users can no longer mint the stablecoin directly. They'll need to buy it from exchanges or brokerages. Well, that's fine because I'm just a normal person. That's me anyway. Next, Coinbase announces $2 million in pro crypto donations raised in 2 months. That is good. Number four, Moonbirds announced oddities burned by October the 31st, which was yesterday, to receive a deadity. That's kind of fun. Next, getting into the Creator Corner, Transient Labs announces Creator Conference to explore Launchpad, Trace, and Payload. Transient Labs seems to be doing some pretty cool stuff. I'd recommend checking it out. I had a read about those 3 tools. Sounds pretty fun. Next, Grufters by Gruff mints out at 0.044 ETH and shoots to a 0.2 ETH floor. This is like a cool combination between Grifters by Xcopy and Azuki. Really cool designs, sold out, kind of an independent artist. Really happy for them to see that success. And finally, 112 contractual obligations NFTs by Matt Kane are gifted by collectors to the Museum of Crypto at the request of the artist. So he has said, in order for you to progress to this next stage of this performative act, you need to give the NFTs that I gave to you away. And 112 people or 112 NFTs have been sent. A lot of faith in the artist there. Very interesting. Legendary, that is the Web3 news and the Creator Corner roundup. Do you want to give us the quick hit of the final headline?
Absolutely, yeah. I saw the news on the snapshot, but I haven't seen the hoodie before. It is the Azuki X Satoshi Nakamoto. We had it also in the Gary Gensler news, the anniversary of the Bitcoin white paper, special edition Enduro hoodie. Interesting thing about is that it is exclusively for Spirit collectors who can claim them in their collector's profile. I actually think it looks really dope. It's, again, the first time I've seen it a couple minutes ago now. Also, we could speak about the Spirit DAO for like a whole show and their influence and their standing and positioning within the overall Azuki community. I think the main takeaway for me is to see that nod from Azuki to do something very publicly for the Spirit collectors and have that hoodie is just a very nice thing.
Yeah. Do you know what one of the interesting things I observed, and this was actually reflected in one of the comments from someone, is they said the most bullish thing about this, and you know what NFT community people are like, when someone gets something and you don't get something, that has typically not gone very well. I don't think. Like people want stuff for themselves. And Alex Hugh Sam tweeted, what's bullish about this announcement is that even non-Spirit holders are happy about it. And I hadn't really thought about that, but I did have a quick look, and it seemed to be the case that other people were just happy that it happened, happy that the top people were being rewarded in that respect. And that's just interesting to observe, because as a community of people, you have to on certain occasions be willing to be positive about other people, right?
I mean, if at this point as an Azuki or Elemental or Beans holder, you're not grateful for the conviction that the Spirit DAO has been showing so far in constantly sweeping and the floors and maintaining a healthy floor, then I don't know what they would need to do to earn a hoodie without someone getting jealous and envious because of that.
Yeah, and also it's like, guys, it's just a hoodie. It's not like they've been given so much. Like, you don't need to be hyper jealous of just a hoodie. But yeah, as you say, very cool, very interesting, good for them and the community. And that brings us to the end of the show. Unfortunately, we've had another great discussion. Legendary, thank you so much for co-hosting, as always. Thank you to NFT Stats, Sam, for joining, giving some of his thoughts. Always an absolute pleasure. And thank you to everyone in the audience. You decided to spend your precious time with us today. We see you, we appreciate you, and we hope we can do it all again with you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.